I'm here with Philip Spencer. My name is Azucena from LGMA Queensland, and I had the honor to interview Philip about his long-term career in local council or local government. Hello, Philip. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for giving us your time and your experience, knowledge, and everything else that comes with a long-term career. For how long have you been working in local government?
I worked in local government from 1973 to 2008.
1973
to 2008.
2008.
That's correct.
Yeah, so are you retired now?
I retired from local government in 2008 to join my partner in a winery, vineyard winery venture out at in Toowoomba, on the other side of Toowoomba.
So,
and since 2008 we've been in the wine business, making and selling wine.
well, that doesn't sound like a retirement at all.
No,
Philip,
it's very hard
So,
work.
can you tell us, how did you start in local government?
I was at the South Australian Gas Company, and I'd finished my commerce degree in 1972, and I was looking for a promotion at the South Australian Gas Company, and I asked the South Australian Gas Company management, because I was a management trainee in their executive management team up on the third floor, which is where the directors were, and as a consequence I only wanted $300 to go to the next level, and in January of 1973 I saw a position advertised for a Deputy CEO at Hindmarsh Town Council in Adelaide, and I didn't take much notice, and in April of 1973 the gas company said, no, we're not going to give you $300 extra, because if we give it to you we're going to have to give the other 5 graduates who graduated in $300 as well. And I saw the job advertised again, so I applied not knowing anything about local government, and lo and behold I was given the job as a, they called it the assistant town clerk. So I left the South Australian Gas Company and started work with Hindmarsh Town Council on the 28th of May 1973 and got $3,500 extra. So I had no idea what local government was at, and that was the start of my career as an assistant town clerk in a metropolitan council adjacent to the city of Adelaide, on the western side of Adelaide. And Hindmarsh was the original settlement of Adelaide in 1836.
All right.
And the council was actually named after the first governor of South Australia, Hindmarsh Town Council. And I was assistant town clerk there for 10 years, and in 1983 I was appointed as the town clerk. That's what we were called in Adelaide, town clerks. Or then they changed and I became the city manager, and I was there till May 1993, when then I left there to come to Queensland to give my children a better opportunity, because Queensland was a growing state going somewhere, and I joined Logan City Council as the Director of Finance and Corporate Services. They used to call me the DAF, D-A-F, because it's the Director of it. They used to call me DAF. And I joined Logan City Council on the 28th of May 1993.
Okay. It was another growing area, I guess.
Logan was a big council. It was one of the biggest in Queensland, and there's a lot of opportunities. And I was Gary Keller's assistant. I was Gary Keller's basically 2IC at Logan City Council. I was there for 13 years, and then I left Logan to become the CEO of Toowoomba City Council in 2006. Di Thorley, who was the mayor of Toowoomba, knew there was amalgamations coming, and she knew that I'd amalgamated my council in Adelaide in Adelaide, so she knew I had experience in amalgamation. I did some amalgamation work at Logan City Council as well in the early 90s, when we took a section of Brisbane over to join Logan, and then in 2007 I was appointed the interim CEO of the Toowoomba Regional Council, and I had to implement the amalgamation process in 5.5 months. And that meant closing down 8 councils and create the Toowoomba Regional Council. We did that in 5.5 months. And then I was appointed as the CEO of the new Toowoomba Regional Council in 2008. But by then I'd met a lovely lady and with plans, and that's when we set out to form a wine company called Second to None Wines, and that's what I've been doing for the last 11 years, growing grapes and making wine.
Wow! So
and that's basically my career in a nutshell.
So so you've been in Logan, you've been in Toowoomba. Any other
High Marsh.
council?
No, only Toowoomba, Logan, and High Marsh were the three councils I worked for.
So this region...
I was basically assistant town clerk in deputy in 2 and CEO in the third one.
Okay, so this region is very close to your heart.
It is, yes, it is.
Okay, because we had a little bit of a chat before this interview, and you were definitely saying how Toowoomba is growing, and I guess that's partly because of the input of local government. Is that correct?
Partly, but Toowoomba has a group of very rich families with old money and new money, and these families are putting a huge amount of investment into the Toowoomba area because it has massive potential. It's next to the gas fields out around Roma and out through there. You've got coal fields at Acklam. It's one of the most fertile regions in the world with its black volcanic soil. Okay. It's at 600 metres above sea level, so it's got massive farming and mining interests in the area, and it has very rich families that are very progressive business people, and they're investing in Toowoomba and making it grow. Like you had the Wagner family, for example, build the airport here at Toowoomba. Now that airport is having one flight a week to China with produce from this area. Wow. And there's plans afoot to make it even bigger. But the families here, some of the major families, are some of the biggest now in Queensland in construction work. Roads, dams, airports, they actually build, and they're very big families, very successful families.
Let's see how we go with all the traffic here in Toowoomba. So would you be encouraging people wanting to contribute into the local government sector to come to this region?
Well, Toowoomba's a big council. When I was CEO of Toowoomba City Council, we were the biggest because we had 7 little country shires join the city, and Toowoomba is 66% of that amalgamated area. So the one city was basically the big hub on which the amalgamation created. Now that they've got something like 1,600 staff, a 500 million plus budget, so it's a big council, and the council is generating a lot of interest in the city by its own expansion in infrastructure and those sort of things. So it's encouraging the big families and the other business interests to actually build and expand in Toowoomba. So the Toowoomba Council is actually generating interest, but it's also augmenting the success of the city by investing in the city through infrastructure. Without infrastructure, with roads, drainage and those sort of things, you don't, and the services that local government provide, you don't have that support. So they're basically helping each other to grow and expand Toowoomba. Now Toowoomba's the second biggest inland city after Canberra.
Wow.
It's a big city, and it's growing. It's growing as well, and the economy is strong, very strong.
So, what's your experience with amalgamation? Is it you had a head start in what was going to happen afterwards?
Yeah.
I mean, does it surprise you about the processes about amalgamation and de-amalgamation?
No,
what's your take on this?
When I was first interested in local government, when I applied, there was amalgamations in Adelaide in 1973. Okay. The South Australian government was going to do big amalgamations in Adelaide councils, and the general manager of the gas company said to me, "You're silly. You're going to not have a job." And I said, "I don't believe the amalgamations are going because there's too many powerful people in Adelaide where the money is." In Walkerville Council, for example, with a lot of old history and money in Adelaide, won't allow it to happen. Well, the amalgamations didn't go ahead in Adelaide in 1973. But what I did was I amalgamated my small council in 1993 with our big neighbouring council at Woodville, which was High Marsh was a very big area, and then progressively over the years they split it into Thebarton and Woodville and then High Marsh. So my original council became 3 councils, and then what we did was then I amalgamated back with the original council. So High Marsh went from being a big area to smaller areas, 3 small, and then back to the original size when local government was first established in 1853 in Adelaide. So my council in Adelaide was actually older than the state of Queensland is today as a government area, local government area. So it's actually, my council is actually older than the state of Queensland as a colonial state as you know it today. So with that history in mind, that's why I came here, because I had that amalgamation experience, and it just grew from there. So amalgamations have a lot of positive benefits, providing they're structured properly. And the structure that we set up here in 2008 hasn't changed very much at all from what was originally established. They've just changed some of the service centre points. They've reduced those down a little bit from what I had originally to protect the council areas, the old council areas, but it's really the same structure that was put in place in 2008, and they've just grown it and expanded it and improved on it.
Okay.
And I think they've made a success of the amalgamation. Just they've left some of the little country areas behind a little bit. Unfortunately, that's the only downfall of the amalgamation. So, but I do know that there's talk on the southern side of breaking away with Pittsworth, Clifton, and those sort of. They want to break away from the country people don't believe they're getting enough services from what they had when they were the small councils. So that's still a viable option for them, but I don't think it's viable economically longer term for them to break away from Toowoomba Regional Council. I think it would be a backward step. It would be a bit like Catalonia breaking away from Spain. That's not going to work because of the economic situation. That's the analogy you draw.
And because of the connections, I mean, we are so connected in such a global economy, and everything is globalised.
That's right.
And it is something to really think about.
Yeah.
So,
when you talk about connections and global economies and things, I'd only been in local government a year in Adelaide, and the CEO, Bob Langman, who was a president of the LGMA, or IMM back as it was then, a national president.
Yes.
So my CEO was actual national president of IMM, or LGMA as you know it now, back in the 70s. And I went to he sent me to this conference where you had all the deputy CEOs and the CEOs of all the local governments at the former Downer residence up in the Adelaide Hills. And I was sitting there one day and I said, look, if local government really needs to expand, you need an investment corporation, you need an insurance corporation, you need, like we've got now, you've got local government finance authority. And he said, that's a good idea. And I said, when I got up to speak, all the old local government CEOs and said, you're speaking out of your hat, you really don't know what you're talking about. But I said, the economy's changing, we're becoming a global industry, we really need. I said, every time I go to the bank to get investment, they give me what I want, what they want to give me. I said, I'm not getting good in returns on my investment for the council. And so he took me along to a fellow called Jim Hullock, who was the Greek Hallam of local government in Queensland. Jim Hullock was that equivalent in South Australia, the Local Government Association in South Australia. And from that then they sent me to Canberra with the Under-Treasurer to sort with the other states to see if we could get a finance authority going. Well, the other states didn't want to play, they knew too much. And anyway, we came back to South Australia and set up the South Australian Finance Authority. And from then you got the insurance arms and the other arms built from there. So back in the early 70s, that's what I was thinking where local government had to go. And now today, you're seeing all those big entities. What they haven't got is their own legal entity. That's one of the major things they really haven't got, is their own legal services, because they're still paying firms to represent them in planning and other things. So there's still a few holes that they haven't really thought of that they could do. They've got insurance, they've got workers' compensation through the, LGMS, those sort of things. But they don't have their own insurance company. They've got JLT and others doing it. Well, if they thought about it on a national basis, they could have a national local government insurance scheme, which is owned by local government and resourced by local government. That's the one big thing that's missing, is their own big insurance thing. They can get insurance underwriters from London and others to cover them, but they're still relying on JLT or Marsh or those sort of things to provide the services. Now, I know from an experienced practitioner that doesn't always work as well. I know there's grumbles in the local government industry that it's not as good as they'd want it. So that's something local government needs to look at in the future, is owning their own insurance company. Own it, not hand it out. They also need to have a good hard look about their own big legal firm which they own. And
So
then the councils can then contract that out.
that would cover our question about how local government could improve according to your experience.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So thank you for giving us that outlook about what you think it could help.
Yeah.
What would be your best experience and your worst experience in council, or what would you like the most? What would you like the least? And some good or bad experience, if you can remember.
Well, in the old days, the worst experience was at local government. The big councils always used to think they knew better than the small council. Now, I came from one of the smallest councils, but my ideas about having our own insurance company, our own local government finance corporation, proved to be what local government did in the end. So the bigger councils always used to think they were better than the smaller councils. It used to always irk me. But the ideas for a lot of the really big things that came in local government, like insurance and finance authorities and what you see at the local government associations doing now, came out of the smaller councils like myself and another group of local government people. We studied at the University of South Australia together, so we had all these ideas because we used to spend a lot of our time during lecture times and doing our workshops thinking about how we can create a better local government. So you had these young CEOs and deputy CEOs in their late 20s and early 30s, and that's what we used to think about, how we could improve local government. The best things is the fact that local government has slowly but surely come into the new age, and they've gradually improved and gone forward. But the one thing I think local government now has that they really need is there's too much power in the mayors.
Okay.
Campbell Newman, I believe, gave the mayor too much power to create a budget. Now, you've got people who really have no idea how to create a budget, creating budgets and presenting to the council. There's a philosophical issue there that they really need to have a look at that power structure they've got. I just think that, that's why you've got so many councils and the problems you've got today with the Saliot and the Ipswich, for example, is a prime example where too much power has got local government a bad name again. And that's why you're getting so many complaints about local government councillors and officers and things, is that power structure is not what it used to be, where it was much more tightly controlled and where the CEOs and the senior officers work much closer with their local government elected council, like we did at Logan. Under Gary Keller and myself and our senior, we worked very closely with Logan City Council, and Logan City Council recognised us as an innovator and going somewhere. But we worked very closely with the elected structure. We protected them, and we made sure that we kept council out of the firing line. But since that structure's altered, that's not the problem. Logan's got themselves in a trouble. Ipswich have got them into trouble. Other councils are getting them into trouble because the power structure shifted, and people think they can do anything they like, and that's not the case. That's the worst thing you're seeing now in local government, is this imbalance of power between the elected and the appointed officials.
Do you think that it is going to improve, or it needs a different structure?
It needs a different structure, and it needs changes to the Local Government Act to bring it back to what it was, so that the mayors are more accountable and their councillors are more accountable to the public and to their constituents than it is now. They just think they can do what they want. And Logan and Ipswich are prime examples of where it's gone off the rails. And if you look at the way that Brisbane City Council, now they've got one of their councils allowing things to happen out of one of their elected offices, which is not what they should be doing. It's not a place for creating shambles in the city and allowing people to demonstrate in the seats and planning that in an elected member's office. That's not what local government's all about. It's not a demonstration for the public to use a council office's resources or a councillor's resources to create problems within the city of Brisbane. That's not what it's about. They're misusing council funds and the public's money. That's trust. You've got to go back to doing what you're there. You're elected by the people, for the people, to act on behalf of the people. And that's not happening in local government today, where before we were all accountable. We were accountable to the council, and they were accountable to us. If they did something wrong, we had to tell them and advise them that you can't do that. This is public money, and it's public money, you are very, very accountable. For every cent of that money, we're holding it in trust for the community, and we have to do the absolutely best we can for the community. I think that's one of the things that are lacking today, that was basically bred into me as a young local government officer coming up, that you held that money in trust for the people, and you had to do the very best you can for the people.
Yes.
And I can't remember in my years in Adelaide or early years in local government here at Logan, where council officers were ever get into the problems they do now with defrauding council money. We used to watch that very carefully.
Yes.
So, there are just things they really need to change, and it needs to get that power structure right again. It's not there now. I could be wrong. I probably am, but I'm only going by what my experience is telling me and what I'm seeing.
I haven't heard that for the first time.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. So, Philip, what would be your advice to new generations, even the millennials, going into local government? Do you like the disruption that we are kind of celebrating now in order to bring new ideas and creativity? And also, what can they expect from council?
If they get the power balance right, that means changing the legislation to get it back to what it used to be. So you've got very clear lines of communication and very clear lines of accountability between the two sectors. So it might mean a bit more prescription, but it worked extremely well, and councils advanced and have done the right thing by the community. That needs to be brought back into things. But there's a huge opportunity for young people wanting to get ahead with a good career. As I explained to you earlier when we had our little private conversation, local government has a future at its feet. If it does things properly, it gets back the trust of the community, which it's been broken right now with what you're seeing happening in some of the councils. Young people can change that. They've got the skills with the new technology that's coming in. I can't keep up with the technology. I'm too old for that sort of thing. But young people like yourself, and even the younger ones coming through, know how to use this technology you've got before me now, which you're recording on your phone. Well, when I joined local government, we had old NCR ledger machines. We didn't have computers. That was in 1973.
Wow.
And I brought computers into my council in 1980 with Nixdorf, a German company, and we had 40-odd councils quickly followed my suit in Adelaide with Nixdorf Computer Company. When old Karl Nixdorf died, the new people who took over the Nixdorf Computing Company, which is a German company, they stopped working in local government. So we then went to Stowe Computing in Adelaide, and people followed my example once again of creating new computer systems in local government designated to local government systems, library systems, accounting systems, information systems, actually created to work specifically for local government. That was one of the other things I was trying to get local government to do in Adelaide, was to have their own computer company where they created all their software, they created all their hardware, and they made it specifically designed for local government, which they could sell. Yes. Australian, there's a very big industry in local government Australia-wide. If they thought outside their own state sphere and thought nationally as a local government industry, they could have their own computer companies with all their own software. They could have their own legal services. They could have all those big entities much cheaper than what they've got now. So the young people coming in today, the world's their oyster in local government, if they're given the right encouragement and a bit of freedom like I had to think. My CEO allowed me to think, encouraged me to think. I was the first council officer they had with a degree outside the engineer. I had a business degree, and then I was a qualified accountant, then I got a business degree, and then I got a master of business. That was unheard of in local government. Very few people. And there's a group of us at my age. There was half a dozen of us who did our university courses together as a local government group, and they created a local government sector within the University of South Australia because of that.
Wow.
So, the young people are there. You just need to get them and encourage them again to do what we used to do back in the 70s and 80s. We were encouraged to think and encouraged to think of new ideas for local government. And we had a bit of competition going to see, come up with a really good, viable idea that was going to improve local government. I don't see that nowadays. You don't see the council officers talking to each other like they used to in my day.
Right.
The accountants used to meet, the health officers used to meet, the community welfare development officers used to meet as their own little groups, and they'd come back with their ideas, and we'd talk it over, and we'd join and we'd implement those ideas. But you don't see that anywhere near as much as you used to.
Right. Okay.
I don't know. I might have been out of local government too long, but I don't hear or see of that happening in local government like it used to. And maybe it's a time trap. Everyone's too busy to do that anymore.
So if they want to attract the new talent from the new generations, you think that they should motivate them into being able to participate in a proactive and active way?
I was encouraged.
Is that what you're saying?
I was encouraged to participate and to actually think outside the square. And basically, you got a pat on the back to come out with good ideas. We weren't afraid to talk to your town planner. It wasn't a competition with inside the council. It was basically a team that was working for the betterment of the council. We'd have our team meetings and we'd all work. We'd help the planning officer. We'd do the costing for him to make sure that he understood what he wanted to do was to create a new suburb or development. Then we all helped him. The engineer worked with him. The accountants worked with him. And the welfare people worked, so that we actually said, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to fund all of this? We worked together as a team for the benefit of the council. Maybe because I've been out 11 years, maybe that is happening. I don't see it, and I still have friends who are working in the industry today, and they are bemoaning the fact that it's more insular. They're more isolated. Where in my day we'd meet on a regular basis.
Okay.
The accountants group would meet on a regular basis. The deputy CEOs would meet on a regular basis. The planning officers had their own association where they met on a regular basis. And then you get back to the council and you brainstorm how you're going to do it all. I'm just not sure that that encouragement is still there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Philip, when you became a member of LGMA, what were you expecting, and did we meet your expectations?
Well, when I'd finished my degree, I was actually asked by the CEO to set up a student group in Adelaide, and I was the first president of Adelaide of the IMM student group. So I actually said I was the president for 2 years. Then I finished my town clerk's diploma, and then I became a lecturer in local government in South Australia for local government 1, local government 2, accounting 1, 2 and 3. And so I became a lecturer and actually created some of the new local government course in Adelaide. And as a consequence, that's how I grew, and I was encouraged to do that.
So it's continuous learning.
It's continuous learning, it's continuous networking, and you've got to have a CEO or senior or councillor prepared to give that opportunity. Now, I did all my study at university at night club. We didn't have time off in those days, in the 70s and early 80s, because most of the courses for part-time students were at night. And then gradually they said, okay, you've got to come to the university's changed when it became the old Institute of Technology, became the University of South Australia. They said, we're going to have more day courses. So I had to get a council resolution to say that I could go to lectures during the day and do lectures during the day, and then I had to make up that time. I was happy to do that because they would give me an opportunity to improve my education, and so I did. So you've got to study hard, you've got to work hard, and you've got to be prepared to make your contribution to the organisation. And that encouragement was always there for me at Hindmarsh. And when I became the CEO, I did a master's degree part-time as well, with my other colleagues. There was 5 of us who were CEOs, young CEOs in the early 80s, and the councils gave us that opportunity because they could see that by investing in our education, they were investing in the future of their councils. I see. And they really pushed us hard to get our master's degrees. There's a bit of competition between the mayors to say, well, my guy's pretty good, how's yours going at his master's degree? And we thrived on that.
Yes.
And some of those leading councils were the smaller councils who were given that encouragement of their senior officers. Half of my seniors team are all studying at the University of South Australia or Adelaide University because our council believed in investing in their staff was investing in their future long term. Maybe I mucked that up when I amalgamated with the council next door, who was bigger. But that's one of those things.
Well, Philip, I really appreciate once again your time, your experience, your point of view on things that are happening or have happened in local government in the last. We are talking here 40 years.
40 years.
My goodness, that's a very long-term career. And again,
I was getting on towards 50 because I just did a job for LGMS.
Right.
In their insurance team. I did a small consultancy for them earlier this year.
Definitely, you are not retired.
No, and I did some work at Dubbo Council. I helped Gary Keller with a little job at Ipswich, and I did some temporary work at Redlands for 6 months, and I acting CEO at Kingaroy when they were trying to get a new CEO in 2012. So I've done half a dozen little jobs, but it takes a lot to twist my arm to get me back to do these jobs. So,
and you're looking forward to travel internationally?
I do, yes. I love travelling. There's too much of the world I haven't seen that I want to see.
So we wish that you can see that happening very soon. All the best with your winery, Philip.
Touring through Spain and Portugal.
Yes, please.
We're high up on the list.
Let me know when you get there.
No worries, thank you.
Thanks again, Philip.
My pleasure, thanks very much.